Amen. Welcome to our first class, our Ugandan school. These are not presentations, they are classes. I would like everyone to remember that as we, not just through this class, but through the ones coming. They are interactive. They are not meant to be sermons from the front. So if at any point you start to feel lost, or something doesn't make sense, or you have a question, if we can't answer it immediately, or if it is something that will divert from the course of the study, we may say so. But we are here to facilitate a class, not do a presentation. So please raise your hand if you want to add a thought to the presentation or you have a question about it. Please don't feel timid to do that. If you want to come to me afterwards and say, I got lost, I didn't understand, that's fine, but it's much better if we understand that and do that during the class, not afterwards. So we may have to remind through that, and please, if you want to speak or add a thought, there are many of us, to prevent confusion. If people have a thought or question, I may call out for a monosyllable answer and then everyone can speak. But if it's a thought I want someone to share, please raise your hand if you want to speak. And I'll see your hand and you can take that opportunity. This is something that I think we're going to have to also remind a number of times. When you do speak, please speak loudly. It's amazing how people's voices can not travel, particularly when there's so many of us and there are slightly different accents. So please speak loudly and clearly. You're speaking to be heard, and everyone wants to or should want to know what you have to say. So that's just some introductory thoughts. I want to ask a question to begin with, and then really putting it out for you to answer and discuss. We've been in this last dispensation through the history of our latter rain, through the history of our midnight cry. Messages were presented that were extremely challenging for a great many people, continue to challenge many people. And in that dispensation, as you would expect, we went through the greatest and still ongoing shaking that this movement will ever see from the inside. So my question that I want to first gauge from the audience is, why are you here? Why are you on this side of this split that has just occurred? So does anyone want to give their thoughts to that? Why are they here? Why are they not with those who have left? What kept you?
I think based on that question, I want to answer it based on looking at how nature. For example, you have said, why are we? You have talked something about dispensation, and there was a test in that dispensation, and it brought a split. And I'm thinking of the test of that dispensation, the nature of that test. So the reason why personally I'm here, or even my brothers and sisters who are here, is because they passed the test. In short, they passed the test.
Brother Willie.
So I think if I understood your question correctly, what you are asking, I mean, what makes us, or what made many of us to to side with the movement rather than going all remaining with those who have left us. And I think how I can view it from my perspective, how I can view it is that if you go to the reform lines prior to the line of the 144,000, we have three major reform lines. And if you go through those reform lines, be it the reform line of Moses, or the reform line of Christ, or the reform line of the Millerites, those reform lines are constructed under a certain motive. That is, you reserve the reformer, and then after the reformer does not complete that work, somebody else takes the mantle to complete the work in that particular reform line. But more to that, so one reason which can give you confidence that we are in the right movement is when you start viewing it from the aspect of the messengers of the hour. I mean, where does the reformer take or lead God's people from which point to which point? From which point did Moses lead the people and gave the mantle to Joshua? From which point did John the Baptist lead the people in the reform line and gave the mantle to Christ? And if you all Miller to Snow, all Miller to Leeds, I think that reform line is complex. But if you see that motive now, you can come in our line and say because God is dealing with men has a striking similarity, our reform line has to be constructed under the same motive. You know, it's Moses, Joshua, it's John the Baptist, Christ. Then you can realize is Jeff Pippenger, and then somebody else who takes the mantle, which if we construct line, we can show is familiar. And then if you show that, you can see that you have every reason to believe in this movement because the messenger, they were all the lead of the movement is no longer Moses, it's no longer Miller. Another reason, quick reason I could give in ending is when we realize that our reform line, and when I talk of our reform line, I'm talking of the reform line of the 144,000, it has 5 primary waymarks with 4 spaces inside. Not sure if you are getting what I'm saying because I don't have. So if we in every space, which we call a dispensation, we are tested with 2 things. The message, there is a messenger giving the message, and there is a leader. And we can go to the dispensation that started, 1989 to 9/11, and show that the message that is being given out is Daniel 11:40 to 45, and is being given by a certain message, and I think that is Elder Jeff. And then the leader in that reform line again is Elder Jeff. So for you to pass the test in that dispensation and be able to continue the next dispensation, one, you must pass the test of leadership, and then you must also heed or listen to the message that is given in that dispensation. When you have proceeded to the next dispensation, that is 9/11 to 2014, we are tested under the same motive, the leadership and the message. I believe the message there was time, and the leader was still Jeff. And I believe that's why in 2012, though Elder Paminda knew he was correct, the message he was given was correct, when Jeff shut him down and told him, no, don't preach, he listened to that for him to pass both tests, the test of leadership and the test of the message. So when you come to the dispensation of the latter end that just ended, we also have the same repeating thing. We are tested by the message and the message. And we can show through lines that the message is, let me summarize it into equality and 2 streams of information. So if I summarize the message, we have somebody giving the message of the hour. Okay, let me term this as the midnight cry message. We have the midnight cry message, and then we have the leader. So for you to know, either you are supposed to be here or you're supposed to be on the other side. First, you must identify the message and the leader. And if you listen to these 2 individuals, then you have passed the test. So part of the reason why I'm personally here is because I know this movement it has a messenger and there is a leader. who leads the movement, and the other side they have rejected both the message and the leadership. So they are on the wrong side of the equation.
Thank you, Brother Will. Anyone else? My sister.
I'll just put in this down. It's just God that is leading this movement. That's why I'm here.
How do you know God is leading this movement?
Yeah, if I look at the lines, how the line has been setting up things clearly. As like my brother said, from the first messenger to the second messenger, you realize there's always that the first messenger takes over, and shift the man to the second takes over.
My brother?
Yeah, I was just saying, the prophetic lines guided you decide. I believe fully that the prophetic lines are led of God, so it guided me decide, and that's
The sister at the back. I saw her hand. If you could perhaps stand.
For me to answer that, the reason why I'm here, I think I have the evidences to consider. Also, when I go back to history, it confirms the point. So that's why I'm here.
Brother Rogers.
I'm here because of methodology. Let me try and explain. So when you come to our reform line, I was considered the reform line of the priests, just 5 primary layers, 4 dispensations. Now, when you come to the first dispensation of the flowering, we need to understand what the message is and that is from the messenger. It's not easy to do that because the beginning of a reform line, but we have histories that can confirm that. If you go through history, the history of Noah, Moses, Christ, and you realize that there was always a message and a messenger. And if you take these messages and pick out their characteristics, you can be able to identify the message in our history. So the moment you identify the message, then whoever was the individual attached to that message becomes the messenger of that dispensation. So at the very beginning of our plowing, we have this new view of 11.45 that the Jeff is introducing into the church. And we know that we already have the view that is contained in the book, Land Revelation by Russ Smith. So Adventists are going to resist the view of Elder Jeff based on what Russ Smith wrote is in his book. But we were required to make a decision which message is correct based on the dispensation that we are living in. Is it Russ Smith's or Jeff's? And using methodology, we were led to see that it was the message of Elder Jeff was the one that was consistent with the world in which we are living. So if you come to the second dispensation, you can't change. Now we know that in that history, we'll have a message. The moment you identify the message, the one attached to that message becomes the messenger. So if you come to this of 9/11 to 2014, you have the message inside. But just like in the plowing, you have the Jeff and part of the just resisting this message. So we know in that history that the Paminda is the messenger. Then when you come to 2014 to 2019, the latter rain, so you know that you already have 2 witnesses of the plowing and the former rain. But when you come to this dispensation, the only thing you need to look for is the message, then identify the messenger, connect to that message, it becomes the messenger for that particular dispensation. So if you do that, we know that the message for this dispensation, if I term it as the midnight cry message, was given by the Tess, therefore we identify as the messenger of this dispensation. But also, just like William said, there's this other test of the leadership. So we know both messengers are the leadership for this part, for the ended dispensation. So I think primarily this methodology which shows me that the two of you are on the right side of the issue, but the other side is wrong.
My brother?
I pray God. This is a personal view, my own perspective. If a house is built on a weak foundation, when there's a shaking, the house falls down, isn't it? And the house which has been built on a strong foundation, it always stays. I would like to bring this on the first show, the line of the being of modern Israel. When our brethren, the Millerites, were in the tarrying time, we see a first disappointment, and God raises a messenger who is Samuel Snow to bring the midnight cry message. And Samuel Snow brings the message and he asks them, "Where are we?" And they reply that we are in the tarrying time and we are at midnight. And those who never had a strong foundation, who had no evidence of the message back then left the movement. And those who were strong and holding on the movement continued with the message. So at the midnight cry, at the Zeta Cup meeting, they were stirred up and they went with the message. So it is in our time. From 9/11, we're in the tiring time, and we're all wondering where we are going, and God brings the message of the midnight cry to stir up the movement. That's the message which was brought by our sister Tess of Acts 27, which has been expanding till now. So when that message came, those who didn't take time to scrutinize that message and understand it by themselves were shaken when the message of equality came. And believe me, they are not with us. So personally, the foundation and understanding by myself the first message of the Midnight Cry, Acts 27, which has been expanding right now, has helped me to be here, and I believe God's leading us.
One last contributor, my brother at the back.
Thank you so much. Me, I'm going to try to summarize. I'm not going to pass through the reform lines, all the leadership changes and other things, because most of the people have talked about it. Me, I will just speak specifically what framed me and pruned me and make me who I am today, and that's why I am here today, is the message of equality that caught my understanding, because me personally, I was a guy who think is too superior, because I was among the men who were born in the family and we had right to do other things. So the message of equality brainwashed me and let me know that all people are equal, and what I can do, all people can do. That is a specific message that made me to have a root where I am today, beside others, and that's why I'm here. And because it was brought by a woman, and if I sift myself, and mostly I see the similarities between Sister Tess and Ellen G. White, and the kind of messages that they have brought into the world and the changes, it made me to be firm where I am, and I'm happy for that.
So why aren't we doing public evangelism? Question. Could you answer that one? Why are we not doing public evangelism?
Well, I was willing to add that everything has been said, the foundation has been laid by the brethren, and why we are not exactly, why do we believe in this movement? All has been said, and I think what can let someone who thinks and see follow what the movement teaches is the principle that is being used by the movement. Because when we go back to the time of Christ, we see John the Baptist was preaching, and during his dispensation, all his studies, all what he teaches were what tests the people by that time. But when we come to the dispensation of Christ, Christ begin now to change the method, bring the method of his studies, the method of teaching that was parable teaching. So when we see how Jeb Pepinja was teaching before from 1989 to 2001, that's September 9th, his method of teaching is really different from how the method of teaching is being used now. So we have confidence in what is being used, because when we go to Luke chapter 10, we see how he confronts the lawyer with how he reads. So this is what makes someone who thinks and who really know what he follows really can follow. So it's all done. So when I come to what is the reason why we're not going to the world and doing the public evangelism, well, for us, especially in South Sudan, we begin to understand this message in 2015, and it was given to us. We begin to be established until 2017 when we are really established to become people. So when we understood that the message shouldn't be taken to the world, because as this message is not the message that is only to serve the church but to serve the world. But for us to serve the world, we have to really go under training. We have to make sure that there is a thorough training that is done to the church. We go back to Christ himself and how he trained the disciple, and from where to where. Okay, so we know that Christ trained the disciple beginning from 9/11, but that work was already done. It was already begun by John the Baptist, who was the first messenger, and then Christ come now as the second messenger. He continued that works, and he began to train the disciple. Those disciples now were cautioned not to go to the world, but have to go to the children of Israel. Okay, so as they were trained, they were at the same time going to the children of Israel. So for us as the spiritual Israel today, and we are also the last generation, since also Christ was also the last generation, we know that we have a special work, okay, to do to Adventism. And to do that special work to Adventism, we have to go through a thorough trainings. And this is what is being done. And we are being given the methodology that we should use to make sure that we approach the Bible. And when we have already understand that, then we will be able to expound everything to the world. So I think that's a little I have.
There's a hand at the back. If you would stand.
Okay, I think the reason we are not doing public inventions now is understanding of the dispensationalism. The dispensation is teaching us that first the church and then the world. So if we understand that the work is to the church and then to the world, then the work has to begin in the church and then finish in the church. When we finish in the church, we can now go to the world. That's why we are not doing public inventions.
Brother Rogers.
So the reason striking we are not doing public evangelism is because of methodology. The methodology we use, as we apply this methodology to different histories and bring them to our history, they teach us that when God is going to do the work, or fulfill the work of the everlasting gospel, he has a given order in which he does that work. A simple example is the 300 days. They're broken down to 4 nights and 18:10. So they teach us that before God can do a work in the world, he has to prepare the church, because it's the church that is to do the work in the world. So there's a work to be done for the church. Then, after that work is finished in the church, it can be later be done in the world.
Do you have a different? Are you going to go back to the line of Christ, or is it a different reason?
Yeah, this if I can, just want to maintain the same line of thought, but I will give a quick example to show what I mean. As Rogers has stated, I believe the reason why we are not going to public evangelism is because of methodology. And if you go to what has been written on the spirit of prophecy, we have more than 1,000 quotes which you can pull to show, not even more than 1,000 quotes. We have a whole book, evangelism, that shows us that, we are supposed to evangelize to the world. But I believe when we come to our reform line, and when we were brought unto this understanding of the time of the end, like our reform line begins in 1989, and then the next waymark after 1989 pin in 11. The moment we accepted those two waymarks, we signed onto something like we are not supposed to go with a plain "Thus says the Lord." If you stick to a plain "Thus says the Lord," we can all agree, like you cannot have 1989, you cannot have 9/11 with a plain "Thus says the Lord." So once you accepted the waymark 1989, you signed to an agreement that you are not going to go to a plain "Thus says the Lord," but you are going to follow methodology. So when I think the light of public evangelism is going to come, you are not going to have this problem like what does Sister White say and what are we saying, because we know how we read is different from a plain "Thus says the Lord."
Do you want to add to that? Last thought.
The question is, why are we not in public evangelism? And I'm trying to conceptualize that thought. When I was confronted with that subject early in 2016, I had to figure out why we are not going to public evangelism. And the reason of the gospel, the reason why God brings the gospel, is to redeem the men, the lost men from darkness, bring them back to His kingdom. And God has a tool to do that. And that tool is the church. So God has to enter into covenant with this church. And then He has to inform them, He has to prepare them to do a work. And if they're not ready, God is still going to prepare them to go and do a work outside. For example, the book of Romans says that for the gospel must go back to the Jew and then to where? To the Greek, which means this gospel has to begin first in the Jew to do a work for them. And if they are ready, God is going to reform the world. So when you look at the lines of the covenant from the time of Moses, Christ, the Millerites, and our line, that aspect of God doing a work first in the church has been a consistent model. When you go to the time of Moses, I think in Deuteronomy chapter 2 and 3, Moses is telling the Israelites they rebel. They do not want to go to Canaan, so they rebel in the wilderness. And they're demanding now because they realize that they had rebelled. Moses tells them, don't go and fight the Amalekites, you're going to be defeated. But they took that charge and went forward and they were defeated. But if they could have listened to Moses, that God wants to do a work for you first before you enter that promised land, they could have been a victor. We come to the time of Christ, the same pattern that Brother William has said. We come to the time of the Millerites too. God has to do a work for them from 2nd October 1844 to 1850. He had to do a work for them before they go to the world. So having those three patterns, we must have confidence in our history that before we go to the world, God has to reform this lost church in bad condition for them to do a work. Because they can't take bad message to the world.
What was the first message that opened up to this movement? So, what I wanted to tease out, which proved to be very easy to do, is that in 1989, it was reform lines that began to open up to this movement. And while Elder Jeff and those others who have left, they would say that you're all here today because you're some type of puppets, that you just follow blindly what select people are teaching. The point I wanted to make at the very beginning was the reason that every one of us are here is because we have brought ourselves into complete submission to reform lines. Whether it's public evangelism, it's how you're interacting with your family, with your friends, in the church, in the world. It's how you choose to spend your time, what you choose to study, how you choose to live, who you choose to marry. Everything that you're doing is subject to a reform line. So I used public evangelism as just another example of that. That the reason that you're not doing public evangelism, and most of you went to the reform line of Christ and those who didn't referred back to it, is because a reform line, whether it's Moses or Christ, has told you not to do public evangelism. The reason that you're here is because a reform line told you that this was the right place to be. So the reason that all of us have our faith in this movement, what I believe one brother referred to as building his house upon the rock, is that you're all here because you're following the dictates of a reform line. So how important do you think it is right now to know where we are on our reform lines? Those reform lines are controlling everything we do and think and say. So right now, what dispensation are we in? Harvest. We're in a new dispensation, and how do you know how to behave?
Back to the different lines of history.
We go back to the different lines of history. So if people don't know how to behave or what to do, or if there's confusion in the movement, where do we need to go back to? The reform lines. They've already, whether you realize it or not, started to control everything that you do and think and say. So now when we're in a new dispensation and we know that various topics trouble the movement, we've gone through this shaking, many people are still uncertain yet to decide, what we need to anchor us is our reform lines. So that's what I wanted to do in the first presentation, is something many of you are probably already familiar with, but go back to these reform lines and make sure we're all anchored in the same place. So we've already began with 1989, the line of the 144,000. On the line of the 144,000, we have how many primary waymarks? 1989, 9/11. Sunday law, close of probation, Second Advent. This is a line of reform, it's a line of gathering. So when we look at this reform line, we understand that the Sunday law, close of probation, and Second Advent are all waymarks given to us by Ellen White. And then in the history of 1989, after 1989, we've been able to place these first two. These 5 primary waymarks, they bookend 4 dispensations. Dispensations meaning just referring to a period of time at whatever scale you want to call a dispensation. The line of the 144,000 itself is one dispensation. This is the final dispensation, the dispensation of the 144,000. But you can bring that scale down and see that within this one story, this one dispensation, you can cut it and identify 4 dispensations. Ploughing, early rain, latter rain, harvest. Last year, around August and September last year, we started to look at these reform lines in a way that for me simplifies it, and that is to see it as the hand of God. Are you all familiar with this? Is anyone not familiar with this? Raise your hand if you're not familiar with this. Good. So we started to see that this reform line, the way it has these 5 primary waymarks consistently through each reform line, is best described as a hand, and that's, I believe, how God gives it to us, the description, particularly in Ezekiel 20. In Ezekiel 20, when it talks about God stretching out his arm with a mighty hand, he says in verse 34, I will bring you out from the people. So if God's going to bring them out, they're in captivity, yes? So he's gathering them, they're in captivity, he's bringing them out of captivity. I will gather you out of the country, so they're scattered, they're being gathered, wherein you were scattered with a mighty hand, with a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out. So it gives us the two descriptions. I will bring you out from among the people, so they're in captivity, they're going to be brought out of captivity, they are scattered, they're going to be gathered out of the countries, and God does this with his mighty hand. We won't go through the verses, but there's other ones that give a similar concept that say it's his mighty right hand. So identify it as the right hand of God. That it's his hand reaching out and reaching out into the world, grasping the 144,000 and drawing them out. We can see that at the different scales. So we identified the line of the 144,000, and then we started to see that had these 4 dispensations attached, and this was light that opened up in December of last year, the light of the repeating pattern. And where do we get this from? Where do we get the repeating pattern most clearly from? My sister? You can speak up.
Like in the Millerite history, see that repeating pattern.
So in Millerite history?
See that repeating pattern.
How do we see that in Millerite history?
Okay, we always see this repeating pattern in this. There's always an increase of knowledge, accumulation of evidence at least. So we see then in this time period still the same repeating pattern.
Yes. Can anyone take us to those waymarks? Can you prove that?
Okay, I want to start from the beginning of the line of the Millerites. So
I just want to do this dispensation.
okay,
Don't go from the beginning.
okay, it's the 3, the Boston camp meeting, the Concord, and then the Exeter camp meetings. It gives us the repeating pattern of each and everything happening in the dispensations.
So if we were to put Millerite history on, overlay it with the line of 144,000, and I know that's not its primary application, but we'll do it for today's exercise. When is October 22? Where would you place October 22? Brother Roger.
November 9, 1880.
I'm not saying not its primary.
Sunday not. So close of probation.
Why? Why?
Because it's a close of probation at the first level.
So you have a shut door, and you have a shut door at the close of probation, just like you do on October 22, yes? And so if you're going to make this October 22, you understand that before October 22 there was a waymark, and what was that waymark identified as? So you have the midnight cry. This is Exeter, yes?
Yes.
And on the external, what do you have before the close of probation, before Daniel 12:1? Loud cry. So we already have 2 waymarks we're overlaying. October 22 is a shut door. Daniel 12:1 is a shut door. Prior to that shut door, we have the midnight cry of Millerite history. Prior to Daniel 12:1, we have the loud cry of the line of the 144,000. You can see that. When does the midnight cry begin to open, begin its swelling? July 21, and that is? What camp meeting?
Boston.
Boston. And then there was one more, yes?
Yeah, Concord.
Concord. So we've seen that the midnight cry began its swelling on July 21st at the Boston camp meeting. That lines up with the Sunday law, because we know that the Sunday law arrives and begins to swell at this waymark. The Sunday law begins, it's going to swell. Swells until the camp meeting of Concord, and then it reaches its climax at Exeter, which is identified as the midnight cry. So we've just taken Millerite history, July 21st to October 22. The arrival and swelling of a message, and then a shut door, and overlaid it with Sunday law to close with probation. That's how we originally understood that. And then what was our second witness? It went from here. We identified a second witness for this pattern. Brother Tim.
The beginning of the Millerite history, 1798 up to 1816, 18, and then 1814.
So we understood time of the end, 1798.
And then we have 18,
1818.
33, 1833, and then 1840.
What was the test in 1840? What were they tested upon?
The messages that Miller had begun to
And what message was that?
time.
Specifically, it's a principle. The day for a year principle, that's what you're going to say? So that what begins to open up here, what begins to swell is an understanding of prophecy. Daniel is unsealed. You have the day for a year principle. That message is going to swell until 1818. It's going to reach its climax in 1833, yeah? And then in 1840, there's a test. If there's a test, can you pass and fail it? If you fail it, you're on the wrong side of a shut door, yes? So you have a shut door. So this is how it originally began. Understanding that you had a repeating pattern at this history of the latter rain history of the Millerite reform line that patterned accurately their beginning history, 1798 to 1840. And this test of 1840, they're being tested on the day for a year principle. It's the day for a year principle that is the foundational principle for all of Miller's logic regarding the second coming of Christ, the 2,300 days, the 2520, the 1260. They're all dependent on the day for a year principle. They're tested on that principle in August of 1840. So now we have two witnesses of the same pattern. You have the arrival of a message, 1798, it arrives. July 21st at Boston, it arrives. Arrival equals the waymark of the Sunday law. Then you have the increase of knowledge. Increase of knowledge becomes the waymark of Concord. And then you have the formalization. And the formalization is just another term for the loud cry or the midnight cry. The midnight cry is just a message formalized, beginning to be spread. It's put into writing, into action. The loud cry is just a message formalized. So when we come to 2018, it's a message that has been growing and developing that's formalized, begins to be publicly presented and proclaimed in a way that everyone is taking notice. 1833, that's what William Miller did. It was a message that began to be publicly presented, been increasing from the time before. Do we have an eraser, by the way? Otherwise, I can just use it. So we understood this repeating pattern. We brought it even to our own dispensation and started to see it there as well, how this repeating pattern existed in every dispensation, which makes logical sense because the ploughing is a message, and the ploughing has to do a work in every person's life. It has to do a work within the movement. And if a message is given that does the work of ploughing, then people can accept or reject that message. So it's a testing message. And what about the latter rain? Early rain and latter rain. It's a message. It's going to test. People will find themselves on either side of that message. So we began to understand this increase of knowledge, formalization, test. I just want us to also identify 1798. How old is William Miller? 16?
Yes.
Does he understand anything about prophecy?
No.
How long before he starts to study it?
20 years. 18.
About 18 years. He starts studying in 1816. So for 18 years, the book of Daniel is unsealed, and William Miller certainly is not studying it. So it starts quietly, yes? 1989, it starts quietly. It swells until it is formalized. It's formalized with the Time of the End magazine. 2014, the light opens up for the midnight cry message, is it quiet? It's not a loud noise, is it? So I just want to introduce to our thoughts, not directly related to our study, but internally, let's say the Sunday law is the opening up of a message. It's quiet, yes? Does everyone necessarily notice? It takes time. By the increase of knowledge, is it gaining attention? At the loud cry, does it have everyone's attention? And then a test. Can we see this? This waymark begins in obscurity and silence. And then that message, as it begins to be opened, begins to be proclaimed, it's described as a swelling. So if this is what the internal looks like, someone apply that to the external. My sister, if this is the internal, compare and contrast to the external. It should be the same. What's the same that you're picking up? So there's going to be internal waymarks and external. The internal has this pattern, this message. What do you expect of the external?
It will maintain the waymarks, but the messages are
The messages are
what the
different.
happenings that are taking place externally are different from whatever is happening internally, but the waymarks are the same.
So there's an internal message. What you have said is there's internal message. And that internal message is connected to what? External events. So the internal message, it begins how? Quietly. It's not a big noise, it's a whisper. And then it's going to begin to swell until no one can ignore it. Compare and contrast the internal message with the external events.
The external events, like, at first, it's just almost as silent as the internal message, but it's taking to gain attention.
So our sister has compared and contrasted this internal message with the external events. The internal message begins quietly. Not everyone can hear it or see it. Not everyone knows. It's going to swell into the loud cry. If we compare and contrast that with external events, how much attention do you expect the Sunday law to get? The waymark of the Sunday law is how big? Little in comparison to this waymark, Concord, and then the loud cry. So in all of these lessons, all of these lines, they're starting to make us rethink. They're twisting our minds away from our traditional ideas of what the future and the past looks like. We're Adventists. Adventists are waiting for what waymark? Sunday law, to be this huge proclamation, and then they'll know. The vast majority of them, are they even going to see it? No. They're not going to see it, they're not going to know. By the time it starts to be proclaimed in a louder voice, it becomes too late. We can identify that much more simply when we start seeing Sunday law as 2014. What problem do people have with 2014 as a Sunday law?
You can't see the nature. You can't see.
You can't really see it, can you? It's quiet.
Yeah.
It's so quiet, people think it doesn't even exist. By Concord, do you know it exists? It's swelling, isn't it? What waymark is this? 2016. Is it building in its voice? 2016, Donald Trump is elected, and a great many people are saying what? Just give him a chance. He just wanted to win an election. He was so divisive because he just wanted to win an election. Now he's president. He'll be more balanced. He'll be nicer. He doesn't really mean what he said. By the time you get to 2018, is it shouting? Yes. So all of these patterns, they're not just patterns, they're to change our mindset of what we expect to see these waymarks look like. When we come to the Sunday law on the line of the 144,000, the lines tell us it's not going to be this massive waymark or event. It's going to start small and then it's going to swell. Internally it'll swell, externally it'll accelerate and swell until it can no longer be ignored. It becomes more into the open. 2014, the stage is set that leads to Donald Trump. 2014, you have the whole change within the Republican Party. They start an internal purge. They start blocking Obama appointing judges to the judicial system. There's all of these things that we can identify in 2014 that are the direct cause and effect of 2016 and 18 and 19. But it's another lesson of why people are tripping over these waymarks when they expect 2014 to be more in the open than 16 and 18. The compare and contrast with the internal message does not allow us to do that. So we bring this pattern, this repeating pattern, that in every one of these 4 dispensations you have an increase of knowledge. First of all, a message unsealed. An increase of knowledge, a formalization, and a test. So this is the line of the 144,000. We bring it down to 3 fractals. The line of the priests. 1989, 9/11, 2014, 2019, Panion. 5 primary waymarks, just like our hand, 4 dispensations. Ploughing, early rain, latter rain, harvest. If we like to use the model of agriculture as our reference point. 2014 becoming the Sunday law. 2019, the shut door. Panion, the second advent. And again, we just bring in that same concept, that there is a repeating pattern. We see 1989, 1991, increase of knowledge, formalized 1996, tested 9/11. Message 2014, increase of knowledge 2016, formalized 2018, test 2019. One of the reasons that this message, this idea of repeating patterns was first introduced to the movement was because people were teaching in the last months of 2018 that the midnight cry was many different messages presented by many different people over a period of time. And the thought was being introduced that particularly some of Brother Theodore's studies, that those were part of the midnight cry message, and we knew that that was going to take this movement off course. So in understanding and defending the fact that the midnight cry is a specific message, we went back to these prior histories, we went back to this and identified that it is one message that's formalized, and every other reform line, every other dispensation within a reform line shows us the same thing. It is never a message from multiple people with multiple elements. So this was, again, part of the defense against the attacks that broke into the open only late this year, but began a year earlier. So we identified that, and then we also understood that there is this repeating pattern in every dispensation. 2012 was the formalization of a message, yes?
Yeah.
2012 is a formalization. 2014, a shut door on that formalization. Everyone who knew better, who knew to understand time in this history and rejected it, has left this movement now. So there was certainly a test placed upon that message of time. We understand the priests, the Levites from 9/11, and then the Nethinims, beginning from 2014. Cloud from 2014, early rain from 19 to Padium, minor rain, Padium to Sunday law, and then their harvest. Question. The message of two streams of information. Why do you believe in that? It's what divided this movement. It's why that we had this shaking in the first place. Why do you believe in the message of two streams of information? Brother.
Because I can identify that symbol of the two streams of information through the two previous dispensations. If I go from 1911 to 9/11, if I say the message in that history was done in 11:45, but I understand there were two versions of done in 11:45. There was what Lambert developed, and that which is contained in Russ in this book. So you have two streams in that history.
So you see it here?
Yeah. So the one in Russ Smith is what the church is holding on to, and are using it to reject Jeff's message. And those who accept Jeff's message, they become part of the movement and begin to participate in this reform life. So when we come to the history of 9/11 to 2014, you have the message of time. When you come to 2012, you have two streams. And the definite time will be just on one side, and then the community on the other. The community say you can predict time, and the devil say you can't predict time because of the courts of Ellen White. So again, you can see that certainly God was already introducing the idea of understanding truths based on dispensations. And then when you come from 1242 and 19 based on these two witnesses, I understood that the light that was being opened up of two streams of information must be correct like that. And another point I want to, most of the time you find that in this movement, some of the concepts we're using them, but subconsciously, like how we work using the laws of physics, but we employ these rules subconsciously. So these idea of two streams of information is something that was already in our movement, but we were subconscious to it. Now God has to raise up someone to formalize it to everyone, that this is a truth in this moment we need to understand. And I believe now we transition from being subconscious to this truth to consciousness in the history of humanity.
Yeah, I could explain the reason why I believe the message of two streams of information is because of the understanding of parables. Let me explain what I mean. We understand that parables comes out in different shapes and forms, but the major forms I can highlight is when we talk of parables, we are talking of comparing and contrasting, but also we can show that we are talking of the concept of end from the beginning, and then we are talking of the first mention among other many forms of parables. So if I can take one of the formal shape of parables, that is the principle of God declaring the end from the beginning, we can illustrate that when we start our reform line from 1989, we are living at the very end of the world. We are living at, we are living at the very end of the world. So for us to understand what is happening at the end of the world, we can go to the very beginning of the world to try and understand how it looked like, and by using the beginning as the natural, is going to teach us something about the end of the world, which will be spiritual in my case. So for instance, if you go to Eden, when the universe began with our first parents, and you study how it looked, how they were tested, they were basically tested on two streams of information. When they are placed in the Garden of Eden, they are going to be given some instruction from God, and He's going to tell them, you can do everything in this garden, but there is one tree you are not going to eat, and that is the tree in the midst of the garden. So He gives them some information which they are supposed to follow. On the contrary, we have another information by Satan to the middle of the serpent, and when Satan comes, it takes the same message that Christ had given, but what he's going to do to this message is only going to distort it. I mean, Christ says, don't eat the tree that is in the midst of heaven. Satan comes, does not come up with his own information or any new information. He only distorts the information that Christ is given. On the contrary, he's going to tell them, if you eat this tree, you are really going to be pride, or you are going, something good is going to happen to them. So you can see it's the same information distorted, and when somebody gives some information, I come and distort it. That is what in the modern world we can call disinformation. So I think if you go to the very beginning, we have two streams of information being given to our first parents. So using either the rule of first mention on and from the beginning, you can understand, therefore, at the end of the world, we must also be tested on this concept of two streams of information.
Thank you. Brother at the back, last point on this.
Yeah, all right. For me, I'll use simple logic from the board here. The reason I believe in a two stream of information is what the line is showing. Because when we see those patterns in modern agriculture, the plowing, the former rain, the later rain, and the harvest, when we see 2014, we understand 2014 is the plowing for the people of the world, for the Bethany. But in 2014, I remember the issue of this movement is when the truth about no public evangelism is also coming. So if that is the plowing for the Nathanims, and we are saying there is the truth about no public evangelism, then what comes into my mind is, who is going to do this work? Then I answer myself and saying, we must be having some way God is plowing them, not us directly doing this. And this one opens the way for us to see the strength in this concept of two streams of information, because it makes us to see that people in the world, they must be having two streams of information which will be plowing them from 2014 to 2019.
So if I step through the logic as it was presented to the movement, December last year we understood that there is this repeating pattern. Both sides accepted that. Everyone accepts it. They see it as something beautiful. Anytime you see a repeating pattern in nature, it's something beautiful. It's like a snowflake under a microscope. Everyone likes it. Then we say, these repeating patterns, plowing, early rain, latter rain, harvest, each one of those four is the introduction of a testing message. Everyone is okay with that. Both sides accept it. A message tests here. That's good. A message tests here. That's good. A message here and a message in the harvest. So 4 messages that do a work on God's people, symbolized by the 4 stages of agriculture. Everyone's okay with that. We say that to do that work, this message must be good. It must be accurate, and we could just say it has to be a good message. So there has to be a good message in each one of these 4 dispensations. If there's a good message and people can pass or fail that message, they must have an alternative, yes? If I'm going to reject Elder Jeff's explanation of Daniel 11:40, then what must I have? An alternative explanation. If I'm going to reject Elder Parminder's understanding of time setting, what must I have? My own understanding of time setting. So there must also be a choice. And whenever you have a choice, you have more than one option. So then you have how many options? 2. And what must one of them be? True. That's all okay. No one has a problem. Where do people trip? People are okay so far. It all fits. It's all beautiful. They like it. And then what do you say? This is the dispensation under discussion. You come to the ploughing of the Nethinims, and you have an opening up, yes, an unsealing. Do they have an increase of knowledge in 2016? Yes. Is it formalized in 2018? Yes. Is the Nethinims tested upon it in 2019? Yes. So everyone's okay with the price steps. Everyone's okay to see repeating pattern. That's nice. A message fulfilling given in that history that tests. That's nice. People must have a choice if it's a test. That fits. The message that they're to choose must be a good message, in opposed to the one they must reject, which must be a bad message. Everything's okay. You bring that down to the Nethinims, and what happens? A shaking. This is what split the movement, because what becomes unacceptable when you come to here? Sorry?
When it comes to the Nethinims, the outside events.
So there's external events, and what we said, what we taught, is that the Nethinims, did we do any of this work for them between 2014 and 2019? No, we didn't do that work. So what is their true and false message? If we had false and true, what is their false and true? There must be external sources and external information that is dividing. You can see the world is divided. America is completely polarized. You can see that right now with the impeachment. What has divided them? 2 separate sources of information. October of 2018, the Midnight Cry arrives. Late September through October, there are two different documentaries, movies aired in US cinemas, the same time as the Midnight Cry message. Can you name them? Fahrenheit 9/11. Sorry, Fahrenheit 11/9. And who created that? Michael Moore. That's released in cinemas late September through October. Beginning of October. What else airs in US cinemas? Only 2 days. Sister Joy at the back. I heard you. The Trump prophecy. And what does the Trump prophecy teach? That in 2011, an American firefighter had a vision as he was watching television and he saw Donald Trump speak. He had a vision that he was listening to who should be the President of the United States. And it became this rallying call for Christians across America to identify Donald Trump as someone who had been raised up of God and should be president. This was a story that ran worldwide through the 2016 election. It's made into a movie/documentary and airs on US television October 2 and October 4, 2018. The Midnight Cry being October 3, the date in the middle. So externally, in the same couple of period of weeks as the Midnight Cry internally is presented, showing there's 2 streams of information, externally, you have two completely different stories of what has happened from 2014. One external story is going to say, Michael Moore is going to say, this is the last president of the United States. He's going to end it as a democracy and as a republic. Another story created by Jerry Falwell, who we can take back to the Reagan years, is going to say this is a president raised up by God who is pretty much God's anointed to run this country. Two streams of information, and this is where the movement starts to divide, starts to split over this issue, because they reject that there can be a true source of information for the world. That was the very beginning, the first crack of the split that has now fully divided people, removed them from this movement. So when they say, we will close now because our time is up, but when they make the claim that we are puppets following blindly, what I want us to see, not just that this is revision and we're going to continue through the reform lines, what I want us to see is that everything that we understand, even if you can't fully explain it, is because you're seeing that you're anchored on reform lines. And everything that you do and think and say is dictated by what dispensation you are on a reform line. So right now you are here. You understand what you're supposed to be doing. If you're a woman, you're supposed to be starting to raise your voice. If you're a man, you're starting to step back, change your perspective. If you are... We won't go through the other lines right now, we'll come to them. But understanding that we are here tells us exactly what we're meant to be doing and thinking and saying as a movement and individually. It's telling us we're not yet meant to be going back to the church to do evangelism in a large fashion, as we know will happen under the application of Pentecost. We're not yet meant to be going to the world. Those that have left, because they have had to systematically destroy from this, rejecting these two streams of information to the Nethinims, they've had to systematically go back and destroy other waymarks. They've had to destroy 2016. They've had to destroy 2012. They've had to say there's no external event for 2014. No external event for 2019. They've had to reject the Battle of Raphia as occurring in 2019. They've had to reject the arrival of the second angel at 9/11. Systematically, they've had to start dismantling reform lines. And what anchors us is those reform lines. So as we go through this camp meeting, I want us to see whether or not we can, through this school, we can understand the right perspectives we are supposed to have based on the dispensation that we are in. If you knew we have a thought from my sister.
I don't get how 2019 is shut door for the network. Please can you explain?
Can you see how, do you understand how it is for the priests?
Yes.
You understand those studies that were done on the Battle of Raphia and the waymarks that take us to 2019. We understand that we all go through successive harvests, yes? That the priests are harvested in anticipation of them doing a work. So we go all the way through this reform line, and here what do we do? From Panium.
Sorry?
From Panium, what is the work of this first group called? If you're a priest, what are you to do after Panium?
Taking the message to the audience.
So you're going to take the message to them, yes? And you're happy to call that a harvest. harvest the remainder of the Adventist church from Panium to Sunday Law. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So after this harvest, this is the church in 2 steps. What next? So from here you go to the world, and you're happy to see that as a harvest. This is when we're going through the swelling of the loud cry. What do we say under the loud cry? Come out of Babylon, my people. So you're seeing there's all these people, they're in the world, they're in the field, which is Babylon, and you're going to cut them from Babylon. That's harvest. Bring them into the garden. That's okay? So if this is their harvest, we're going through the model of agriculture. Prior to their harvest, what must they have received? Latter rain. Prior to latter rain? Former rain. Prior to former rain? Plowing. So what's going to plow them? External events. Can you see how external events from 2014 to 2019 have intensified? 2014, we're going back to an Obama presidency. Before the UK left the European Union. Before Brazil elected Bolsonaro. We're going back to a much more peaceful time in 2014. And since then, external events have escalated. So what plows the Nethinims, you've said, is external events. We went back to the ploughing in our history. If we were to go back to the ploughing of the Millerites, ploughing of the Millerites is 1798 to 1840. Is that okay? There's a work here, a message that's going to swell. It's all based on the day. 1 day in Bible prophecy equals 1 year. So the 490 days equals 490 years. 2,300 days equals 2,300 years. That's the message. And this is what plows them. So whatever does the work of ploughing, we're given a message, and we either accept or reject that message. So we must be tested upon it. People are tested in 1840 when a prediction is made that Islam will be restrained August 11, 1840. People are going to be tested upon that, based on what they've experienced from 1798 to 1840. So ploughing, the word ploughing, this symbol of ploughing, is just a parable symbol. It's meant to give us a description of something that individual people are going to experience. When people are ploughed, people are receiving a message that is either going to change them for the better or for the worse. Is that okay? So externally, the Nethinims from 2014 to 2019, if they're ploughed here, they must be receiving some type of message that is going to they'll either accept or reject, will either be to their benefit or their cost. Does that make sense? So they've received a message here. At the end of this dispensation, they must be tested upon it, yes? So that is why we place a shut door for the Nethinims in 2019. We're not talking morally. All that we're saying is that there's a test here. Does that answer your question?
Okay.
Does it answer your question?
Yes.
You sure? So from 2014, you have this rise of Donald Trump. 2016, he's elected. 2018, you see that formalized, and we could go into that, but we won't. 2019 has been a testing year. We could just talk about the impeachment. That itself has divided people quite easily and clearly into two different groups. And if they side with Donald Trump in this dispensation, and they think from 14 to 19, this fellow makes sense, I'm okay with him coming together with the evangelical churches. I'm perfectly happy with him appointing conservative judges and starting to enforce Christian morality, if that's their position in 2019, how do you think they're going to do at the Sunday law when we begin harvesting them? How do you think that person will do? If I'm a Trump supporter, I've watched him rise from 2014 to 2019. I heard everything he said that was racist and sexist. I saw his attack on immigrants. I saw him come together and appoint evangelical leaders into government jobs. I saw him go to churches and talk about bringing back Christian morality through the American courts. I've seen all of that. 2019, all of that comes to a climactic point, and I'm still supporting Donald Trump here. I'm on the wrong side of this test. Is there any hope for me at the Sunday law? No. So can you see how this is a test? People, it's not a moral test, but the people that come out on the wrong side of this history, the chances they have of recognizing who Donald Trump is and the wickedness, the error of bringing together church and state within America, it will cause them by the Sunday law to reject the message that we bring them in the time period of the harvest. So already there starts to be this division in society. Already the Nephilims, the world, already divided. Is that okay? Yes. We had a hand.
Okay, I still have a question on the other side of the point you talk about silence.
Sorry?
I'm saying, I have a question on that point which you raised about silence of the message. So we see in 1989, the message arrived. Yeah. And that message was in silence, it was not yet understood. But then we see from this line, this side is equal with the other thing. So I was saying like 1989 is the same as that way, which is Sunday law, which is, yeah. Or which become 2019 in our history.
Yeah?
So, yeah. So, in this history, so it's like the message in 1989 it was not understood, and then when it comes to the point of information of increase of knowledge, it was understood and then complied. So when you take that one, you will say that in 2019, yes, 2019 the message is in silent, right? Then later is going to be understood, which is the formalization of message. So which is the increase or not, sorry, before the formalization of message. So all this year we have been silent about those two ways people do in Parliament in 2019. But I heard before that we talk about the fulfillment of November the 9th. So can you give us a clear picture? Because if it is so, it means that waymark is understood, right? So which we cannot say again without putting the increase of knowledge in that waymark. Have you got my question?
I'll reword it and you can tell me if I'm misunderstanding. 2019, November 9. You're saying that we already understand the battle bracket.
Yeah.
So how can we have an increase of knowledge and formalization when we already understand this waymark? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, because Sunday law is always in silent, or it is that waymark is always silent, right? Then later on the increase of knowledge.
Is it silent or quiet?
Quiet.
1798, is it silent or quiet?
Quiet.
Say 1798, it's silent. 18 years before Miller starts to study. 1989, is it silent or quiet?
Maybe I misused the word silent. I was supposed to use quiet.
I just want us to see that it can be 1989, reform lines are already beginning to be understood. So you can see it both ways. 1798, William Miller understands nothing for another 18 years. 1989, we're already having the first seeds of that message. So I just wanted to, that's separate to your question. I just wanted to make that point. We'll take our past dispensation, 2014 to 2019. There was a message, there was an increase of knowledge and a formalization and then a shut door. At this formalization, October 2018, what waymark was opened up?
November.
What waymark was opened up here? My brother. So are we looking backwards or forwards? Forwards. So we're looking forwards in 2018 to see November 9, 2019. So at this waymark, what are we looking towards? At the same time, 2018, what do we also begin to understand better? 2014. But when did 2014 open up? 2012. So we're always to be looking forward. Does that make sense? But even though we're looking forward, does it prevent us from having increased light on what has come before? It's like a torch. You can shine a torch, but it's going to shed some light on what's behind you. It'll shine forward, it's going to give most of the light forward, but it also projects backwards. So that's why when we get to 2018, we start to understand 2014 better, because we're in the history of the Sunday law, and that history, all of that history is opening up to us. But its focus is forwards. So at the loud cry, our focus is forwards, it's this waymark. But we'll also be shedding light backward. Our work, for those who are faithful, will be prior to the Sunday law. Warning people, the Sunday law is about to happen. We'll be pointing people forwards to see this in advance. Just as we did 2012. Does that make sense? We'll kneel in prayer for now. If you have any other questions, bring them tomorrow to our next presentation. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for our blessings. Thank you for this school and the fact that we have been able to come together and unite us together. I pray, Lord, that you will bless all of our time, both within presentations and surrounding it as we interact. Lord, I pray that light will open up, that we'll become more and more established in your truths, not just for ourselves, but for those that we care for back in our homes, those that we wish to reach and solidify in the message, those that we wish to yet approach with this message. I pray, Lord, we'll be trained up for the tasks ahead of us. Please bless those that are still coming, bring them safely. And we put all things into your hand, all of the planning, all of the organisation, all of the classes. And pray, Lord, that you will lead and guide in this school. In Jesus' name, amen.